Welcome to the Dateable AF Podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Kyle, a therapist in private practice.
And I'm Rachel Howell, a qualitative researcher.
Each week, we break down the emotional patterns behind dating, love, conflict, and connection, and what actually helps people build relationships that last. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 8 of the Dateable AF Podcast. Today, our topic is, nothing's wrong, so why am I unhappy? When safety becomes stagnation.
You started that in kind of a sultry way. I was like,
A very sexy topic. Well, what we're talking about is when you're in a relationship and nothing's wrong, you're not fighting, you feel pretty stable. So why is it that you're feeling disconnected? And safety is supposed to feel good, but sometimes it actually just starts to feel deadening.
When I was thinking about this topic, I thought about all the times that I've had friends of mine. The vast majority of my friends are couple, but I do have a handful of single friends. And oftentimes they'll look at the landscape, especially if I'm talking about some dating that I've been, or they've been to, an outing where they're looking at all these lesbians that have, let themselves go or whatever. Oh. And the comment they have is, man, I'm so glad I'm not single because I just, what would I do if I was on the market with that? And I have to say that I oftentimes look at a couple friends.
And you're like, I'm so glad I'm not.
Yes. Because
The grass ain't always greener.
Right. As I'm thinking, oh my God, that looks boring as shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can become stagnant. So our episode today it's not about drama, but it is about emotional flatness. What happens when you just become so stable that it's stale and boring and flat?
Well, it also made me think about the conversations we were having in some of our earlier podcasts about being curious and having outlets that are not necessarily attached to your person. And I think that is also relevant to the conversation we're going to have today. And one of the ways that you keep things spiced up or interesting in your partnership and fresh is that you are fresh yourself. You're doing things, you're exploring things so that you have a freshness to bring into the relationship.
For sure. And if you see a relationship that is abusive or chaotic or toxic, it's so easy to recognize that. You're like, ooh, don't want that. These things are a little harder to suss out. If your relationship becomes really predictable, maybe a little bit too calm, a little bit too low conflict, maybe you're not speaking up about what you want, that leads to low intimacy. It leads to low curiosity. And the bottom line is that some relationships are peaceful, but they're not alive.
Yeah. And I sorry about that. My dog was scratching on my screen in case anybody out there, our audience, was concerned. She was scratching my screen, which is not okay. And I had to let her out.
Tell her it wasn't okay.
No, I did tell her, but she's not very cooperative in that way. Yeah. So anyway, did you have a question for me?
I do have a question for you. What do you think happens that causes relationships to drift into that stagnation?
I do believe that part of it is people not continuing to keep themselves interesting, not continuing to stay, interested in other things. Mm-hmm. And I also believe that the possibly taking the interesting parts of themselves somewhere else instead of into the relationship.
I can definitely see that. I think that that's the responsibility of both people, because if you're interested in something that your partner's not interested in, you may be more inclined to talk to someone else about it. And if your partner's interested in something that you're not interested in, you may be inclined to half-ass listen to them. I think you got to pay attention on both sides of that. The truth is that sometimes we just have busy lives and we're going 100 miles an hour, and that can lead to stagnation. You don't take time to be romantic or plan a date or do something different with your partner.
Those are the things that I think you have to work on, is making sure that you carving out the time. And even when you carve out the time, it begs the question of, then do you have things that you're interested in talking about? Or are you creative in the things that you carve out your time to do together? Or do you just continue to go to the same go-to things? And then are you talking, like, what are you talking about when you come together?
Yeah. If you're a parent, that is one of the things that has scope creep, as they say. You end up talking so much about the kids and about parenting, and that can cause stagnation in a relationship. You got to make sure that even though you love your kids and your kids are such an important part of your lives, that can't be the only thing that you talk about with your partner.
Both of us being parents and raising kids with someone, we certainly know. And there are times, I mean, just be honest, folks, there are times when your kids are growing up where it's all consuming.
Yeah.
And between working full time, your kids hitting those stages in their life cycle where either they demand a lot because they're really little, and so you just have to step up for them in many ways, you know, tie their shoes, all the other things.
All the things.
Into adolescence where it can be rough and takes a lot of your emotional energy to just try to keep them balanced. And that is honestly, sometimes at the end of the day, when you come together, you have things that you have to discuss. And I think that's challenging too, is there are things you have to get to with your partner, because the next day you're kicking off again and there are just a host of things. And we were talking about this in our last episode about, underperformers and overperformers. And I think that's also where this can come into play, is that the great need for balance is that if one person is really carrying that sort of day-to-day load, then I also think that they're just too exhausted to be interesting for you and with you.
And they probably need to download about some of that stuff at the end of the day, which doesn't really make for a lot of freshness in the relationship. You mentioned when you're working full time, I think work stress is another thing. If you get so used to coming home at the end of the day and dumping about your work stress, that can take a toll, and that can cause stagnation in a relationship, as can routines. Like, Taco Tuesday, that's what we have every Tuesday. Those kinds of things can cause you to feel stagnant. If you go to the same place on vacation every single time, or go to the same restaurants every single week, those things can start to feel stale after a while.
What seems tricky to me about this, and I'm sure that you've coached your clients around it, is sometimes instead of taking, like you said, the burden of your day into your house where your person is they're the one that's going to hear it all, that you dump that somewhere else, a little bit of that somewhere else, so that then you can open up space for your person with some other things, versus making sure that your person is looped into your life in all the really important ways, and that you're not continually taking stuff, somewhere else and depending on somebody else to carry that. And that's kind of a balancing act, I think, as is this conversation we're having about being, let's say, not a chaotic person, because you don't want to invite somebody. I mean, I don't. Some people are drawn to chaos because I don't want I don't want chaos, but I want interesting. And that also can be a little bit interesting to tease out.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's a big difference between being chaotic and being interesting, but there can be some overlap there that you got to watch out for. We also get into what I call emotional autopilot, where we're just asking the same questions or responding the same way. How was your day? Well, if you're asking that every day, it seems like an automated question. It doesn't seem like something you're genuinely interested in. And I also think that conflict avoidance can cause stagnation. If there's something that's bothering you and you're tiptoeing around it, I think that can get stagnant.
So I've been in a relationship where the person I was with, we worked together.
Mm.
And that had its own interesting nuances. So the upside of that is that if you both are really interested in the same thing, you have a lot to talk about, and it's stimulating because you're sort of problem solving and doing that thing. But then if you find yourself sitting in the bathtub together at 8 o'clock at night and you're still problem solving the work thing, then it's likely
it's not very romantic. How about that spreadsheet, honey?
No, exactly. So we did put some boundaries on. Okay, because again, it was easy. We liked what we were doing. It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
But putting a boundary on it and saying, hey, at the point at which you shut the door of the office and you walk out, then we need to have conversations that are different than the work talk.
Yeah. I like that idea. I like that a lot. Jo does not love, she appreciates therapy. She has a therapist that she, turns to. She is not just lapping up the idea of talking about therapy stuff. And so when I have my therapist friends over, her eyes kind of glaze over, and
I've seen it.
You know the look I'm talking about.
Oh, I've seen the same look when she talks about dogs.
Exactly.
Or pickleball.
Yep. And so we do have to both be mindful about that, because I'm really passionate about my job. I love my job. And unfortunately, I can't talk to her about the nuances of that because of confidentiality, but I can talk about themes. And I could talk about it all night. And I know that's not her favorite topic. And so we both have to work on keeping it interesting.
Some people have really interesting jobs. No, I will say I have a very dear friend who used to be in the medical malpractice litigator. And I thought, girl, I don't think I would ever get tired of hearing the stories about those penile implant lawsuits. Because, those were great conversations. It's like, well, sir, why? You were pumping it up 12 times a day. It was not made to be pumped up 12 times a day. Of course, it's real.
Overuse. It's like you can't return your Nikes if you wore a hole in them. It's the same thing. Product overuse is not covered by the warranty.
Exactly. I could listen to that. I only got those on a Friday night over Mexican food and margaritas. That I was like, man, I could listen to this all day.
This is an interesting job. Why didn't I go to law school?
And they said, what? I said they were doing it 12 because anyway.
Yep. Or I know we've both had several friends that worked in the DA's office, and they were pulling bodies out of trunks and things like that. That never gets old to talk about.
No, or you go, like one of our friends, they did work in this office, and she would go in at the end of the day, and her partner had all the dead bodies spread out, all the pictures of them all over the kitchen table. And she's like, well, what would you like for dinner?
Exactly. You're like, honey, no, put away the photos.
We know some interesting people. Yeah.
We do.
I digress.
For sure. Yep. I don't know how we got down that rabbit trail. let's talk about the hidden cost of that feeling like nothing's wrong, but something's a little off. I think the emotional impact of that is, first of all, boredom. If you're in that place where you're just sort of lulled into a hypnotic state in your relationship, first of all, you're going to get bored. And that takes a toll.
Oh, yeah. And you're going to be lonely. There's no doubt that you're going to be feeling lonely in your house because you feel like you have any stimulus.
Yeah, you don't have a real connection. That leads to something that you mentioned, I think it was a couple of episodes ago, and that danger of being susceptible to an affair. If you start fantasizing about another person or what it might be like to have an interesting partner, that can cause some real danger in a relationship. If you're bored and lonely and thinking how great it would be to be with someone else, I think that leaves you wide open to acting out.
And I'm going to bring this back around to dating because this is just what I do periodically in this, that it is something to pay attention to when you're dating someone. If you do not find them interesting when you're dating them,
bye-bye.
Then it is going to be very difficult. Don't assume that all of a sudden they are going to captivate you because the things we're talking about that happen in very solid, good relationships.
Yes.
And this, what we're talking about too, is really getting down to the nitty gritty of some of the work you have to do in order to keep things moving. And that's working from the assumption that there was something exciting and captivating in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
Very good point.
Yeah. So if you're sitting across from somebody and you're really struggling to find them, girls, if they're sexy, I get it. And you get all caught up in that. But I'm telling you, that only lasts for so long. And then you have to move one another in different ways other than that.
Yes. If you get bored and lonely in your relationship, you are going to withdraw emotionally and you're going to become quietly resentful, or maybe not so quietly resentful. You're going to get numb. And so I don't want you to confuse loyalty and boredom, or loyalty and stagnation. You can be loyal in your relationship and you don't have to let it get lonely and sad and stagnant.
Yeah. So much about this is kind of recognizing a rhythm, I think, of a potentially really healthy dynamic relationship, because I don't want to be with somebody where every night when I come home, I'm expected to be my best on point self, right?
Yes, for sure.
You want to be able to fall into silence with your person, to be able to be quiet with them, to know that if you're sharing a space with them or when you're with them, that you're not always expected to perform. It feels really good. And I think what this is kind of a balancing act of understanding the difference between that and also being interested and interesting enough to keep the relationship active, not busy.
Yes. Y'all, we cannot say this enough. Interested and interesting are such foundational pieces of a relationship. And if you keep those two things going, you're not going to fall into this pattern of stagnation. You've got to bring it, though. Be responsible. And you don't have to be on at the end of every day. It's not like you're putting on a little show for your partner.
Right.
But thinking about, there had to be something interesting in your day. What do you want to tell them about? And there had to be something interesting in their day. So you want to try to elicit that from them.
And again, we've talked about this over and over again. Ask questions, because I would like to think that you're picking somebody, or you're you're interested in somebody whose ideas and thoughts you want.
Yeah.
Right? Like you would hope that you care, that you're picking somebody who you think, hey, I've been thinking about this, and what do you think?
Yeah.
So anyway,
If you don't want their opinion, that's a whole different problem that we'll have to address on a separate episode.
well, I know this all sounds crazy, but interested and interesting are two great words for, and I use it honestly. When I'm with my mother, I try to really lean into what she's interested in. I try to pay attention to what she's talking about in the moment, so that I can, and I try to remember, so that I ask, hey, how is your friend Betsy? So this isn't just about romantic relationships. It's just, and my doing that makes it more interesting for me.
You're very good at being interested. I think that is a skill that you definitely bring to the table in your friendships, and I'm sure in your dating relationships too.
Thank you. Who knows about that?
There's
some people you could ask, some people you might not. Some Moniques you could ask that about.
We're not going to ask the mean one.
Yeah. No. Oh.
Rachel dated a mean person once, y'all. We've talked about it briefly on the pod before.
My BFFs, my throuple, they were so relieved when that one did not come to fruition. That one really tested our relationship, I think.
Okay, let's talk about why couples stay stuck in that sort of stagnant phase, where they're just kind of lulled into hypnosis.
I just think it's fascinating that so many people really don't want to rock the boat. They don't want the change. Like, they just love, and I get it, I do, that there are generally some things that you want to be able to count on, right? But other than that, it's like, really, do you want everything to just be the same all the time?
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to what we were saying at the very beginning of the episode, that there's some safety, I'm putting that in quotation marks, in the familiar. And so maybe you don't want to try a new restaurant because you might not like the food. So you're going to go back to your corner, diner because you love the food there, and you just keep going back there over and over. It might rock the boat if you went somewhere new.
Now, change, especially if one person's good at it and the other's not, then it can create conflict.
Yeah. And people are afraid of conflict. They don't, like you said, they don't want to rock the boat because rocking the boat might create some conflict.
Well, let me just say, people out there, a discussion about a night where, let's just say, because Sarah was talking about this before, but she puts her foot down and said, I want to eat Indian food. And Joe doesn't like Indian food, but she goes, okay, that's not a conflict.
Right.
It's not. That's just a conversation.
Yes.
Now, if you argue about it and you stamp your foot down, and then you're going to end up in a conflict. But just the mere mention of and being decisive about what you want in the moment is not a conflict.
Yeah. I want to do an episode, and I don't think we have this queued up, but I want to do an episode about this need to relieve other people of their discomfort, because I think it relates to what we're talking about today. It's really hard to watch someone that we love being uncomfortable. And so it ties right into this. If I suggest something that I know might make you uncomfortable, then I'm going to want to take it back.
Mm-hmm.
There's some fear that if I want more, I'm going to have to deal with your discomfort. So I'll just squash that down. And I don't think that's helpful, because you're going to end up stagnating.
And, it's not bad if, like, one day I want you to greet me at the door in, like, saran wrap or something. It shouldn't be a conflict. It's okay. I would love that.
If you had a person who greeted you at the door, and I would say it depends who that person is.
Like Tawanda, fried green tomatoes.
I forgot about that. I love it. Something else I just thought of is that I have seen people stay in relationships because of guilt gratitude guilt, which might sound weird, but I was talking to someone in my personal life this week who is getting out of a relationship that he stayed in because his partner had sort of rescued him from a bad situation. And he ended up staying with that person out of guilt because the gratitude he felt because she rescued him from the bad situation, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that, if you're staying with someone for any kind of guilt, that is not going to go well for you.
No. And I also think, again, you're staying with somebody who, and this, I'm going to say this about friendships too, is that staying in them because they're familiar is one thing. But I also think you have to put effort into those to keep them active and alive.
Yes.
And that if they can go bad on you as well, if you are doing nothing but enjoying the pleasantries of sameness in them.
Yes.
And I think in both ways that if you're doing that in a relationship, a romantic relationship, or you staying, let's say, from a guilt standpoint, in eventually that's going to catch up with you. And eventually either you're too afraid to leave. And so you're going to step towards somebody to get out of it. You're going to get under somebody to get over somebody.
Yeah. Best over somebody.
Yeah. And friendships sizzle out. You know, that's the thing too. I think that they also then die out because you've not
nurtured them. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Let's look at some of the ways that stagnation shows up in people's day-to-day lives. For example, just having the same conversations every day. Like I said before, hey, honey, how was your day? As opposed to asking a specific question. Hey, how did that meeting go with Bob? That shows that you were paying attention and you remembered that they had a meeting with Bob and you genuinely care how that meeting went, as opposed to just a generic. It's kind of like when you see someone and you say in a perfunctory way, how are you? You're not really looking for the answer to that question. So having those same conversations every day can definitely lead to stagnation.
For daters, when you're out there dating, and if you are a bad listener, it will show up because you're not going to remember what anybody said to you, and you're not going to then have any questions to ask them. If you really are good at listening to what they're saying, then that should be in the next conversation you have with them. Whatever was going on, you should wonder about it.
Yes.
If they were getting ready to take a trip, if they were have a sick parent, if they, whatever the thing is, you don't have to remember everything. But if you're really listening, then it should be on your mind when you see them, like, hey, I wonder how that went.
Yeah. And people love it when they know you're paying attention to them. That keeps all kinds of relationships fresh and alive. Friendships and family relationships. Not having deep check-ins with someone can also, just skating on the surface can keep things stagnant. Living parallel lives with your partner, where you're each doing your own things, but you're never coming back together and checking in and asking questions.
Yeah, this is funny. You had scrolling together. And I mean, I have seen people in restaurants, couples in restaurants sitting there, both of them on their phones. They're sitting right across from one another. And I think that all of us have probably been guilty of doing it in our own houses where we're sitting there. And again, it doesn't mean that you don't have checkout time, because some people just need a timeout. They need to not be talking to somebody. I get it. And that's fine. But if you look up and you're spending 80% of your time doing that crap when your person is around, I mean.
That's kiss of death right there. Kiss of death. Not taking emotional risks in general is going to lead to some stagnation in your relationship. So say the risky thing, ask the risky question. It's okay. And it's not your job to make your partner feel comfortable. So if they feel a little edgy about a question that you asked or a comment that you made, it's okay. You guys can talk about that, but that's part of what keeps things alive. Let's shift to kind of the flip side. Instead of looking at how stagnation shows up, let's talk to folks about how they can rebuild that aliveness in their relationship in a way that is still safe.
Identifying it, just saying, hey, I think we're spending too much time on our phones or on our screens and not enough time talking to each other.
Yes, I like that a lot. Just naming the fact that, hey, things have gotten a little flat. Let's bring some novelty back in, and think of fun ways to introduce novelty. Go do something you've never done before. Look through local events that are happening in your town and go find something that the two of you have never done before and try it. Maybe you would like it.
And for all of our listeners out there that live in Austin, there are interesting things to do in Austin. And again, with you daters, and there are things to do just
every day.
Search for them.
Yep. And in any place. I mean, you don't even have to live in a city. There are plenty of things to do that you've never done before. Go bird watching. I don't know. Something that's novel. It doesn't have to be something exciting, but just something that's new and different. One of the best ways that you can rebuild aliveness in your relationship is ask better questions. Like we were saying before, don't get stuck in asking your partner the same old thing every day. Think of something new and interesting and exciting to ask them.
And create shared meaning.
Yeah. Like find things that are meaningful to both of you, and use that as a way to sort of keep things alive. Share your fears and your hopes with this person. And if it feels a little awkward to do these things and to introduce this novelty, that's okay. Like just tolerate the awkwardness, sit with that discomfort for a minute and see what develops out of it. You do not need to have a crisis to grow in your relationship. You could create newness in different ways that are not crisis oriented.
I love that. And I want our audience to, big takeaway is that you do not need a crisis to grow. And we are not talking about crisis or chaos for the sake of chaos. Let us be clear, because that is a very different thing. We could do an entire episode. We probably already have talked about that some, but those are people who just lead a chaotic life. No, that's a different story.
Different thing. Okay, let's think about what we want our listeners to take away from this episode. The first thing is that a calm relationship is great and it can still need attention. So don't ignore it just because there is no crisis.
I did talk about that cellophane thing earlier. I mean, the saran wrap thing that you could try your own thing. I don't know, whatever you're into, but just surprise your person is a good way. Also, having just come off of a hike today with a person that I've known for a while, but just making a new friendship connection. Not a love connection, a friendship connection. And we took a 2-hour hike. And what I thought about in doing that, because we just chatted along the way, there was so much space for us to just chat. So much without screens, without a bunch of noise, without interruptions. No one was asking us what we wanted to eat. None of that. And I really enjoyed that today because we had a lot of time. We had 2 hours. So we learned a lot about each other in the 2 hours. And I think that is very applicable to a thing to shake it up a little bit, to say, hey, let's get outside of our routine. Let's move outside of these things that we typically do. I think is a good suggestion. Think about shaking it up just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Wanting more connection with someone is not selfish. It's actually a way of nurturing your relationship.
And stagnation is common. There's no doubt that you will, if you're in a long-term relationship, whether it be friendships, whether it be romantic relationships, you're going to hit lulls. It's just how do you get out of them, what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a failure. It's a common thing. And don't stay stuck there. The last takeaway that I want you to hear, listeners, is that aliveness in a relationship is built on taking small risks. So don't shy away from those. That's the thing that's going to bring life back into your relationship if it's gotten stale. If you have some thoughts about this after listening to it and you want to chat with your partner about it, or you want to chat with your friends about this, here's a question for you. Where do you notice comfort turning into autopilot in your relationship? And what do you miss about how you used to connect with each other? So talk about this. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear your thoughts about this, what conversations you're having with the people in your life about this. Please email us. We are info@dateableaf.com. You could also DM us on Instagram @dateableaf. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who might need it. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Dateable AF podcast, where we help you find your happy ending.
And remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of self-respect, don't text your ex. Stay dateable.
AF.